Blessings, good evening. One of the signs we have on a tree in the monastery is something like if it's no good, let it die. If it doesn't die, make it good. One of these teachings that we perhaps know from Ajahn Chah, but actually I think it's an older, it's a saying that's been around longer than Ajahn Chah was even. It's a saying that refers to the practice, the training of the heart, of the mind. And the purpose of our practice is to purify the mind, cleanse the mind from what we call the mental defilements, rooted in all those thoughts, intentions, or mental states rooted in greed, anger, delusion. So when they arise, let them die, and let them pass away. If they're staying there in your mind, they're not dying, then make them good. Reflect on them, turn them into wisdom. Our tradition comes from the forest Tudong tradition of not only northeast Thailand, but it was very strong in northeast Thailand with Lumpur Sao and Lumpur Man were the kind of granddaddy teachers from way back, 100 years ago. And then, because of the effectiveness of their teachings, both teaching Sangha and laity, over the decades, they had many monks and nuns who became well practiced in the Dhamma, became very wise, peaceful people, and many of them became teachers in their own right. And that includes Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah was my teacher and teacher of many of the Western Sangha. But that's the origin of the way we practice in the monastery. You know, we live in the forest, so this is a forest monastery, quiet, secluded place out of the city. And that's in line with the Tudong tradition. In the time of Ajahn Man, Ajahn Sao, and then even Ajahn Chah when he was a younger monk, the monks would still wander around the countryside from place to place because there was a lot of forest. Originally maybe 85% of Thailand was forest. So there's forest, jungle everywhere, which for people interested in building towns and cities, they probably saw that as an obstacle. But for forest monks it was an opportunity, because it meant you could wander from place to place. And there were villages everywhere, so many of those villages would provide a source of food for the wandering monks. Not always, sometimes those villages didn't have faith in Buddhism, or perhaps they were just so poor they couldn't provide food. But generally the monks could wander from place to place, camping in the forest or living in very simple little huts. And so people would say, well, how can you live like that? And they say, well, I rely on my kawat, or my set of practices, the different trainings and practices, ways of practice that I've received from my teacher. So as forest monks, we live in the forest, we have a bowl which we have to look after because that's what we collect food in and use to eat our meal. It doubles as a kind of a travel bag. You can put some things in it when you travel and put it over your shoulder. You have your robes, and you don't have that many robes. One main set of robes, 3 robes, maybe a few additional robes. Not many possessions, enough that you can carry, because if you're moving from place to place, whether it's kuti to kuti or forest to forest, you have enough that you can transport it ideally in just one go, put it all on your back and carry it. It's a lifestyle of simplicity. Then you also have all the other practices we do, the way we relate to senior monks. Say if you're a junior monk, you show respect to senior monks, bow, listen to their instructions, look after them, wash their bowl, wash their robes. If you're a more senior monk, well, you give instruction, share what knowledge you have with the junior monks, guide them, take care of them. And something people noticed about the forest monks of northeast Thailand, they might be living very simply, like Luang Por Man, Luang Por Sao often lived in very basic, simple little hermitages, a few bamboo huts on the side of a hill or in the forest somewhere. Almost no facilities at all, no running water, no electricity, nothing like that. But people would say they go to those places, they're always very clean. Even if it's in the deep jungle, the paths were always swept. There's never any rubbish or junk around. The buildings were always clean and tidy. Monks would live like that as part of their practice. All of this comes from a way of training from Ajahn Sao, Ajahn Man, down to Ajahn Chah, down to us. A way of combining what the Buddha taught in terms of meditation and training the mind on the inside, cultivating mindfulness and wisdom and letting go of the mental defilements, but combining that internal practice with an external lifestyle that supports it. So learning to be mindful whether you're sitting or walking meditation, or you're cleaning up, or you're eating your food, or you're washing your robe, or travelling from place to place, walking, or nowadays maybe in a vehicle. Maintaining mindfulness, restraint at all times, that's the aim. One of Ajahn Chah's teachers, Ajahn Ginari, Luang Por Ginari, Ajahn Chah praised him as always being very mindful, restrained, peaceful in his behaviour. And they asked him once, how do you practice? He said, well, I practice trying to maintain mindfulness in all postures, meaning in all activities. So he said, practicing the Dhamma, practicing mindfulness in the Buddhist path doesn't just mean sitting, meditation only. That may be a time when you practice very intensely and you can become very still, very quiet. But you're practicing to develop mindfulness in all postures at all times. So obviously it means standing, sitting, walking, lying down, stretching, turning, twisting, moving quickly, moving slowly, doing this, doing that. Because human life involves many different activities. Even the life of a monk, there's still a fair variety of things you do. And he said you practice mindfulness in all postures, so that you can be aware of your body and mind, practicing restraint, because we have a mind that's always kind of bubbling out, overflowing with different kinds of emotions, mental states coming out in our speech and our actions, some good, some not so good. You have to practice mindfulness and restraint in all postures at all times, he'd say. And he said the heart of the practice is freeing the mind from these mental defilements, greed, anger and delusion, so that the mind doesn't become, we say, blemished or darkened by them. So what does that mean? Well, when you start practicing mindfulness, you notice there's certain ways of thinking, certain mental states we get caught into that don't make the mind feel light, happy, peaceful, bright. They do the opposite. And they make the mind seem darker. They fill the mind with kind of feelings of stress, discomfort, discontent, agitation. They make the mind feel heavy. And that's something you've got to observe. Lumbur said, this is what we're practicing, to keep the mind light and free from the effect of the mental defilements. Because when they come under the effect, then they darken. He used the word salmong in Thai, which means the defilements, they make the mind sad, gloomy, depressed, unhappy. That's what mental defilements do when we pick them up and hold on to them, those ways of thinking. Nobody wants to be unhappy, sad, gloomy, but often we don't realize what we have to do to not be like that. We get caught into all kinds of negative thinking, worries, attachments, prompt all kinds of reactions to things. We attach to the things we like, we attach to the things we don't like, and so on. But if we're not careful, the mind keeps getting caught into mental defilements. When we're not mindful, we're not aware, and the mind becomes darker, unhappy, or what we often just call dukkha, suffering. And Lumbur said that's the way you practice. You're walking from forest to forest, you're sweeping leaves, you're washing your robes, you're meditating, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going. Your number one priority is to keep your mind free from mental defilements. And to do that, you have to practice mindfulness, turn your attention inwards, practice awareness. Not only to abandon the mental defilements that have arisen, but also to prevent them coming back up again. A lot of our practice is actually preventative, being aware of weaknesses, habits of mind that we've observed before perhaps, and then learning how to avoid falling into those traps, those mental states again, how to prevent them coming up. Lumbur was like many of the forest monks. He began his life living in a monastery and did quite a lot of study of the texts, the suttas, the Vinayas, understanding Buddhist philosophy, terminology, the ways of practice from the texts, from the teachings. Which is good, in a sense it gives us a structure to reflect on our behavior and understand better what we have to do and how to do it. But like so many monks, he thought, then this is limited though, just reading, listening, learning. It's a good start, but it's not enough. I need to go out and put this into practice for myself. That's how the Buddha taught. You have to get to know for yourself, see, understand for yourself. It's not a teaching based on belief alone. Belief only will set you in the right direction. Maybe you believe in the Buddha, believe in the Dhamma, the Sangha, but it doesn't solve your problem of rooting out greed, anger and delusion. For that you also need to cultivate the mindfulness and the insight. So Luang Por Ginri, like Ajahn Chah later, he went off wandering. Usually with some other monks, wasn't totally alone. He'd go with the other monks and he'd often go and visit a teacher. But to visit a teacher, going from one teacher to another could take months because they walked. The roads, the tracks were not very good. The maps, the knowledge of where people were was not very clear. There's no phone or internet or anything like that. You just go on word of mouth. So like looking for a teacher like Ajahn Mun, he's going on hearsay, word of mouth, and they say, oh, Ajahn Mun is in that town or that region, could be 100 or 200 kilometers away or even more. So like finding a needle in a haystack perhaps. Just go wandering and may take months before you actually get close. So I spent a lot of time wandering, moving from place to place, but also practicing as they went, and then find suitable places. Suitable, that's something you have to understand. Suitable would be like a place maybe quiet forest somewhere, but also far enough away from the village or the town not to get too much disturbance, but also close enough you could still walk out and maybe receive food every day, because those monks sometimes they would have to go without food. And that's not very practical for long periods. So you want to find places where you get support, and that also depends on the people, whether the people had faith in Buddhism. Some places they had no faith in Buddhist monks or Buddhism. They maybe were spirit worshippers, so they didn't think of putting food in monks' bowls. So that also would be a factor. Where is there support? Where is there a nice, peaceful forest? Got to have water. So Luang Por Ginri, and then later his student Luang Por Chah, they would practice like this, moving from place to place, meditating as they go, meditating as they walked, meditating sitting in the evenings, in the mornings, and practicing mindfulness in all postures in different situations. In the end, Luang Por Ginri, he had a wish, I want to go to see where the Buddha was born, where he got enlightened, where he practiced. He walked all the way to India from Thailand. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. Totally into the unknown, not knowing anyone. Just trust. They said, when you go on tudong like this, not knowing anyone, and no one going with you to support you, what do you do? What do you rely on? You rely on the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, your faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, your precepts, your Vinaya training, your monastic discipline, the rules of training, the way of practice that you've learned. You rely on the qualities of mindfulness and wisdom. This is what you take with you. And you have your bowl to collect food, your robes, a few basic items, then off you go. So he spent about 10 years walking across Thailand to Burma, to India, to the holy places, and then all the way back again. Practicing mindfulness as he went. The important thing is to be training the heart to recognize defilements and abandon them, to get to know yourself, to know the different mental states that are coming up. What is greed, anger, delusion? Most people know what it's like to feel angry, but do you really know anger, or what stimulates it, what it does to your mind, how it becomes karma that will come up again? Do you know how to abandon it? That's knowing anger. Just knowing that you sometimes get angry, that's another thing. Same with greed, with lust. Do you really understand greed? What gives rise to it? What it does to the mind? How to abandon it? This is the kind of activity that these monks are involved with in order to root it out, meaning to uproot it, abandon it from their minds. Probably one of the qualities that they had to rely on most of all would be just patience, endurance. You live in the forest just as we do. You live in the forest, it's not always easy, the weather is not always conducive. The simplicity means you have to sometimes go without comforts, that you don't always get the things you want, you don't have money, you don't have a store of food or other things that you might like. So you have to endure physical feelings, particularly discomfort, pain, endure mental states, sometimes feeling sad, unhappy, lonely, agitated in one way or another, wanting things that you haven't got. A lot of that requires endurance, patience. And patience means keeping the mind in a wholesome state when you face something difficult, whether even if it's only facing something internal, your own mood, but learning how not to let it darken your mind. So you might have anger or greed or desire or worry, fear come up. The idea is to treat it correctly with the Dhamma, to maintain your patience with the actual feeling of that emotion and see it as impermanent, as not self, and let it go. When we're impatient, well, we tend to let it take over the mind, and we start thinking in that way, becoming that way. Conditions our behavior, what we say, what we do, the way we look. When we lose our patience, our expression will show what mood's going on. Maybe we have worry or fear or anger or desire, wanting something. Frustrations even comes out in the way we look, and then what we do, the way we talk. But when we practice patience, it starts to bring up a more wholesome state of mind, even when these things are coming up. Not giving in to them, not acting in unskillful ways because you have a certain mood in your mind. So when you're frustrated with another person or yourself or a situation, when you're patient, in the Buddhist sense, when you have this quality khanti barami, it means you don't give in to the negativity, the reaction that you may have coming up in your mind. You're aware of it, but you don't let it condition your behavior. So maybe you're angry, but nobody knows. Maybe you have strong desire for something, but nobody knows. It's not coming out in your behavior, what you say, what you do. Maybe you're ready to explode with rage or something, but you don't, because you're practicing patience with that mood. It's another characteristic or character trait of the forest monks. They learn to be patient with the difficulty, the tiredness, the hunger maybe, the lack of, the deprivation sometimes, lack of certain things that they need, willingness to wait, can't always get what you want when you want, patience with the conditions, but then they get the result of that is that the mind, it becomes trained. It tames the worst excesses of greed, anger and delusion. You get some more mental control, more wisdom, more awareness, and the mind feels happier and lighter because of it. So, maybe I'll leave you with those teachings tonight.